How you doing? Tim here, and this video is my passionate defence of the English Championship, which means you'll expect me in a discussion of the Championship to use phrases like ring fencing. Yeah, that's going to come up. What you might not be expecting me to talk about, but which I will, and I do think is relevant, is the French TV deal and French domestic rugby. What's that got to do with the English Championship? I will explain in just a moment. But firstly, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please do hit subscribe. Remember, it's just us. We don't have any financial backers. We don't have any ex-pros, legends of the game on the team to help spread the word. We don't have a marketing budget. We rely on you. We just love our rugby just as you do. And to reach other people like that, we need you to like, share, leave your comments, and tell a mate if you enjoy the video, which is, as I say today, all about the Championship. And that's the only place to start, is that victory at the weekend for Cornish Pirates, famous victory against the mighty Saracens, which the rugby community in England and beyond loved. And that wasn't just crowing because of what Saracens did last year and the reason they're in the Championship. There was more to it than that. Results like this do not happen very often. It had a Japan versus South Africa kind of feel, a David and Goliath effort, because it is like that. Clubs in the Championship cannot compete with the Premiership sides that come down, for the most part. We've seen that over the years. It's worth remembering, though, players absolutely can compete, and the Championship does an amazing job at finding, developing, nurturing, and then letting progress some absolutely brilliant talents. And recently, in a discussion about RFU funding, I had to think off the top of my head some of those players that we've enjoyed watching in the Championship, and there's some real household names there. And this was just off the top of my head. There are so many more I forgot that people replied and reminded me of. But the Championship does a brilliant job. Clubs can't compete. The gap between Premiership and Championship players is wafer thin. In many cases, there are Premiership quality players. In many cases, there are Premiership quality players that just haven't been given a chance yet by a Premiership club. So I'm a big fan, and I understand the arguments for ring fencing. I'm personally against it. The arguments are long-term financial planning, which Premiership clubs aren't able to do, and it will help their financial viability if you get rid of relegation. I get it. I think there's another way. I get the argument about without relegation, you'll be able to take risks on more young players, and that will develop them and help the national team. I get it. I think there's another way. And quite often people point to countries like New Zealand, Wales, Scotland for comparison, but I just don't think there is a comparison with those countries because England is very different. I do think there is a country that is comparable, and that's France. And to that end, I want to mention an article by Owen Slot in the Times that was there on Tuesday. Great writing. Owen Slot and Alex Lowe do some fantastic journalism in the Times. Couldn't recommend it enough. And Owen Slot's done the business again because his ears pricked up, as ours did, if you've been listening to the podcast recently or seeing some of the videos in this feed from JB. Owen Slot's ears pricked up when he saw the French TV deal with Canal Plus with a value of around £97.5 million per year for French domestic rugby, which is 3 times as much, near enough, than the Gallagher Premiership deal with BT Sport. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast or seeing some of the videos in the feed, JB looked at that and said, well, the Premiership's failed. Premiership Rugby's done a dreadful job. This is really bad news. This is going to lead to loads of English players going to France because there's 3 times as much money swilling around there. It's an inevitable consequence. I get JB's point. Maybe to some degree, he has a point. I think it's much more nuanced than that, and I'm going to hopefully peel back some of the layers, or rather, I'm going to point to the peeling back of the layers that Owen Slot has done, because he's done the legwork for me here in this article, where, I mean, let's just remember, the English Premiership is 13 clubs, shareholders of the Premiership. They retain the money from broadcast deals, sponsorship. They get parachute payments when they go down, so they can effectively keep their entire squad if they want to in the Championship. They get academies funded by the RFU, whilst at the same time Championship clubs have had their funding, no academies funded by the RFU, and they've had their RFU budgets and RFU funding cut significantly in half in the latest one, and there's been other cuts in the past. So back to this article. Compare that with what happens in France, where, as Owen Slot points out, the 2 top French divisions operate as one. So the £97.5 million TV deal is for all 30 clubs, top 14 and the French second division. 1/3 of the money goes to the French second division, or just over a third. And the Gallagher Premiership deal is a third as much. So French second division clubs, between the 16 of them, are getting the same that the Gallagher Premiership clubs are getting, between 13 of them. It's comparable. And that has knock-on effects for the annual budgets of these French second division clubs. More than £6 million in most cases, whereas, as Owen Slot points out in the Championship, pre-COVID and pre the latest round of RFU cuts, £1 million, you'd be lucky to get over that. So it's no wonder you've got a more competitive proposition that a broadcaster like Canal Plus would be interested in. And when you look at the results that happen in the French top second division, there's a lot more of those Cornish Pirates beating Saracens type of results. And this is why. They bargain together, negotiate together, and spread the money out together. Again, you could argue there's a chicken and an egg thing, but the attendances at grounds, the fan base, 5,000 go to a French second division game. Some Premiership clubs would be happy with that, and 1,700 go to the Championship. And again, how much of this is down to the fact? How much of this is Canal Plus are investing more money because there are more fan bases to tap into, and that's evidenced by 5,000 people? Or how much is it 5,000 people turn up because you have a really competitive product that gets televised, and clubs that can go up and down and can aspire to be winning the top 14 in a few years if they play their cards right? It's an interesting one to think about. Here's another little stat. 52% of a club's annual budget in this French second division, no more than that can be spent on salaries. So it isn't just about getting the money in and then spending it on a load of players. No. And when you add that to the fact that in every matchday squad in France, 16 homegrown players have to be in that squad of 23, and suddenly you're getting a lot of young French guys being developed, being incorporated into the system, which is helping the national team at the end of the day. And then you're getting a significant amount of money spent on things, due to the 52% only on salary, spent on things like strength and conditioning and physios and coaching, nutrition, even in France. I know. So you got more scale and more money, but it seems to be focused on working towards making the French national team better. And is this why we're starting to see so many great young French players come through? There's a lot of examples of French players in the top 14 now, and even in the French national team that we play in England at the weekend, who came through this French second division pathway. And then look at academies as well, and think about this in the bigger picture. There are 14 academies in England, all funded by the RFU, 13 with Premiership clubs plus Saracens, and 1 in Yorkshire, versus 30 in France. Every single French second division club has an academy. And suddenly you see how much, by comparison, the cards are stacked against English Championship clubs from every single angle that you look at it. And I think France might have a way to look at it. All these discussions about ring fencing or not seem to be binary, and the choice seems to be ring fencing or stay as we are. Well, just showing you the French model there, and France is a far more comparable country, both in terms of rugby and the history here, in towns and cities across the country, and in terms of population and all the rest of it. Much more comparable than any other country. And do you not like the look of that model? And could that not be a third way that maybe people aren't talking about, and perhaps we should be talking about? And on the subject of that TV deal, I did a little bit of quick maths. Canal Plus. Right, so here's the principle. Sometimes you buy in bulk and you get a discount. That's the case if you're shifting a product that you're getting from cash and carry. You might get a little bulk buy discount. But when you have a scale, a critical mass, which the French domestic rugby has, divisions where teams can go up and down, it's highly competitive, you get great quality, all 30 teams, then you've got this critical mass that means Canal Plus might go, yeah, that's worth £97.5 million a year to us, because they have the potential to broadcast, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I might have got my maths wrong here, not my strong point, 422 regular season games between the two French divisions that Canal Plus have purchased, potentially, versus a maximum number of regular season games that, if BT Sport broadcast all of them, 132. So BT Sport potentially have 1/3 as many fixtures, and what do you know? They've spent 1/3 as much. France has got the jeopardy we talk about. It's working for the national team, and clearly it's a lucrative product which people are interested in, and that has a knock-on effect. When you've got 30 different towns or cities spread across France, that's focal points for a community. That's going to mean participation goes up, which means more people are going to be filtered into the academies, which means the national team's going to be better, and it's a cycle that's going to feed itself. And it just feels at the minute like Premiership clubs are wanting to sort of get their bit of meat and scrap over that and not think about the bigger, more long-term picture. And I think a bit of long-term thinking is what's needed here. Maybe a bit of speculating to accumulate. Not taking the short-term cash, but thinking of the bigger long-term win overall. And I have this discussion quite a lot about the Rugby World Cup. I want to be, in 10 years or 14 years' time, I want to be able to arrive at a Rugby World Cup where 10 or 12 teams can legitimately win, but that's only going to happen if you have a long-term vision and you start incentivising people to play for their nation of birth rather than for higher amounts of money, which is understandable, going to an adopted nation or retiring from international rugby like a number of Fijians do to get a more lucrative contract at a French club, for example. It needs a bit of joined up, long-term, strategic thinking. Some people be willing to take a bit less now to have a much bigger pie to take a slice of in the future. And I wonder, and it's very topical being as England are playing France this week, I wonder if France might have the answer for domestic rugby in England as well. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments, hit subscribe, share, like, and we'll see you on the next video.